going to do is a little similar to what we did last year. The format that I'm going to do, if you have a question, for now we're going to save them till later. What we have in the format here is we're essentially going to go over some of the things that we've done in the past year. I'm going to hand it over to Charlie to share some, or Stillman to share some numbers and things of that nature with you related to what we do, mainly because I don't know how to count. And and when we're done with that, we'll go back and I'll just share some new stuff with you, because there's some stuff on the horizon, or stuff that we've actually recently just kicked back in that I think you guys will be pretty excited about. So as long as this thing works. Boom! We did have a little bit of a busy year. I'm going to go over some of what we see up here. In the upper left, we had earlier this year a series of denial of service attacks by a group known as LulzSec. They hit us 2 days in a row. We made some changes, and then they decided that they wanted to play instead of making it not work. So we no longer had that problem. We had some issues with some data walking out the door that shouldn't have. A really creative individual figured out how to change some numbers in a cookie, thereby completely becoming someone else on a forum, which has led to some internal changes. And then we actually had our kickoff initially a little earlier in the year in the war on botting. A gentleman, forum poster by the name of Butt, was not very fond of something we had done. And a gentleman who I believe is in the audience, if I read correctly, who writes a blog called The Nosy Gamer, had been following it fairly closely. He's written some really nice things, but one of the things I really appreciated the most about the writing that he had done was that he spent a lot of time on botting sites, cutting and pasting all the juiciest of the angry comments. So it's worth a read if you get a chance. I'm not getting paid to plug somebody's blog, but it was really worth it. And also, if you do searches, it's interesting. He's one of the first hits that comes up in relation to this stuff. So I was pretty pleased to at least see the attention it was being given. Now, one of the things that happened this year as well is we've kind of changed the way we do business at CCP from a security perspective. Prior to 2010, it was kind of an ad hoc thing. It wasn't really anything we were doing from a dedicated fashion. I think what we did have then is the GMs and customer support staff were spending some time building up big campaigns like you remember Unholy Rage and some of the others, where what we would do is we'd kind of wait and catch a whole bunch of guys through whatever mechanisms, and then we'd ban like 10,000 people at once and be like, yeah, high five. I think over the long run, I think that those were really cool and people really liked them, and you did see some of the performance metrics work the way that we're going to see them work when you look at some of our numbers. I think that what we ended up with is a whole bunch of bumps, and what we'd really like to see is something that's a lot flatter, right? Where we're changing behavior over the long term, not making people's day a little hard once a year. In 2010, they hired myself and someone else. We formed, I've spoken about this before, but for those of you who don't know, we had formed an internal task force specifically to essentially write a lot of the things that we're utilizing now. It was a group of people that was essentially just meant to deal with the problem of botting, right? So internally, we would get together, we would have a meeting. It wasn't any of our, except mine really, it wasn't any of our day job. It was just something that had to be done, and we were given the time to focus on that. That went pretty well, and then somebody said, hey, we should really focus on this and make a team that's just dedicated to handling these issues. And then a reorganization happened, and the team kind of wasn't there for a little bit and then was back. So as part of the reorganization, we now actually have a larger team that's complete mandate as far as the Eve project and essentially the company is concerned is only to deal with security issues. Security issues from our perspective extend beyond things like infrastructure hardening and firewalls and all those fancy security things. But I believe that they also extend to the RMT and botting situation. I don't believe that you I think that's a security problem, right? I don't really see it as, I see catching bad guys as catching bad guys. I don't see it as a customer service thing. Right now, the security team is 4 people. Me, I'm the security dad, which is a creepy way of saying whatever I really am. I think it's product owner. Then we have CCP Stillman, who's what I would consider an application vulnerability expert. So we're dealing with things like analyzing web applications before they go out the door to make sure that you can't change a number and become someone else on the internet, and things. And actually, the Eve client as well. There's some things that need to be looked at there. So we're getting to a position where we're over time spending more time hardening our applications the way we should be. And then our 2 IA analysts have moved over as well. They help with investigations on bad activity. So bad guys doing bad things. An investigation, for the most part, when you're trying to catch someone doing something they don't want you to know they're doing, whether they're a bad guy who's doing evil things on the internet, or whether they're a guy who's working for your company doing evil things, or whether they're internal or external threat, finding them is essentially the same skill set. So what we do is we kind of combine that and leverage that already existing, investigative tool set in order to do a better job, essentially. Oh, I already said all this. All right. One of the things I haven't mentioned, though, is that we also have a focus on RMT, and we'll touch on that a little bit today when we talk a little bit about some of the changes we made to what we're doing with botting as well that I saved just for this special occasion for all you fine people. And we're still tasked with handling the internal investigation. So we yeah, I'm not walking up that one. So we still, if you send an email to internal affairs, it still goes to internal affairs. They still do the same job. There's just a little more responsibility in some areas. Botting, 2011. So this is last year, I hope. The ESTF was the small task force that was introduced to build detection mechanisms for catching people doing bad things. Instead of having a person actually actively tasked with following people around and using some kind of magic barometer for determining whether or not that person is a computer program or a person, we have developed and leveraged other methods. So I don't think having a person sitting there clicking on something is the most efficient way to determine whether activity is happening beyond the scope of what it should be. The 3-strike rule, some people really hate bots, and I don't disagree with them. And some of you who are perhaps here are a little vocal about that 3-strike rule, where we say, just ban them all the first time. Our numbers, whether I have the graph or not, I don't recall, but our numbers do show that at least in the original instance of the detections, when we started them earlier in the year, we were only seeing an 8.5% recidivism rate, which means that while I agree that these people are doing bad things and they're having a negative impact on the game itself when they're originally doing the botting, if we can take them and convert them into a good person, then I think we all win. It's more people doing good things in good ways, and what's an Eve player if not someone to help his brother along, right? We did see some sharp reductions in activity. We'll show some of the Stillman will show some of the graphs related to that. But essentially, the fewer botters there are in pretty much every way, including server resources, the fewer botters there are, there's more stuff for you guys. If we don't have bots running, you can have bigger fleet fights. There's more CPU available for things like that. So there's a lot of reasons for us to do this. A lot of people ask sometimes or theorize sometimes, like, this guy that's running a 7 bot farm, he's paying his subscription, so we don't want to ban him because we just like money so much. And I do like money, but I like it a lot. But the fact of the matter is that they're utilizing more than their reasonable share of stuff. And so it is worth it to us, because if our if you're trying to have a fight and it's laggy because, we have CPU issues, and we find that 10% of that is devoted to people who are botting, we'd rather give that 10% to you. Like, that's a better experience. I'd give you all of my CPU if I could. Yeah. 2012, we've reinstituted in the past X number of weeks. I don't remember when exactly. Some of the mechanisms we have, we tuned them a little bit. I'm gonna let Stillman talk about some of the numbers because you guys really love graphs and stuff. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna explain a little bit about how we've changed what it is we're doing and how the punitive actions are being adjusted and things of that nature. So I put a picture here just for Stillman. I found this on Reddit the other day. If you're not familiar with the original picture, there's a dinosaur walking on the moon, Tyrannosaurus Rex. And this nebula just happens to look exactly like that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stillman.
So how does this work? So as Sreegs discussed, one of the things we noticed really quickly when we start banning people is that because these bots are not only active 24/7, where a lot of players might be AFK or just chatting, we see a pretty sharp decrease in the CPU load on our servers, which means that there's more CPU for you guys. On the left axis, you can see it's an arbitrary metric as far as I understand, but it gives a good idea about the load per user. And you can see it goes from the red line, then we have the yellow line, which means that's where we banned a lot of players. So that was the first strike we did as of this round of bannings. And we see a drop by about a sixth of the total server load per user. There's several reasons for this. As I said, bots are much more active. There's a lot of really bad bot coders, as we've seen lately, where they will try and spam commands thinking that it makes a difference. It doesn't actually. And then we can see also from the graph that on the weekends where you have the spikes at the top, we do see load actually increase on the cluster, which is because on the weekends, of course, you guys are playing more, which is the legitimate traffic and load that goes on. Another thing we see is that when you authenticate to the cluster, it will check if you're active or not. If you're banned, you're not active, which means that we have really funky things like this, where you can see, for instance, here, this was the first wave of bans we did, and you can see, you have some 30,000 attempts of connecting, and again, this is actually just poorly coded bots, so we'll try and re-authenticate, thinking, well, if they don't get in, it's because, well, the cluster is still down or it's still coming up from downtime. And they will keep authenticating, and we can see certain laugh there, seeing them then connect, and it's getting nowhere. Another funny thing we have here, and it's actually not anything to do with what we did. It turns out to be, we found as a result of a big bot farm we banned, a GM, a very clever GM, went and saw, well, we have another one over here we failed to connect the dots with, and they banned that group, and suddenly, these, 20 accounts started, completely spamming the cluster with connect attempts, which didn't actually get them very far, which is a shame for those guys. In terms of the people we banned, we can see here, this is, I left the x-axis alone because I would tell how many we banned. But you can see the distribution across skill points they have and the main character on the account we banned. As we would expect, a lot of these people are low skill points. We do have, a bit of a spike in terms of skill points. We have the 140-some million skill points character I feel sorry for, but he probably shouldn't have bought it. But a lot of the characters are below about 20. That's a majority. That's often because they recycle characters because, well, we catch them once in a while. So they don't have time to skill up, which is good, and it increases the barrier to entry, which is always nice. In terms of where these guys have been botting, you can see the Forge is supposedly a pretty popular area. It's this G's area. As with the Citadel and Lone Trek, it's all the northern parts of the Heisig areas. We do see some 0-0 regions, but it's a minority basically, which suggests. either the 0-0 guys are more clever than the Empire guys, or they're just not botting very much in 0-0. In terms of alliance, yeah. I'm sorry. Oh, you think so? No. So we can see here. So we have a few alliances that seem to account for a large portion, but actually what we're finding is that while there is some people that stick out, the distribution is actually it's fairly even once you get into some of the less known alliances. And it's very hard to really say that like the Russians are bad people, because it's really not what we're seeing. Can we save that question for later? I'm just showing stats, actually. Another interesting thing, and this connects back to the skill points one. We can see the majority of the people are low skill points, but what we're also seeing when we look at the ships they're flying is actually the Tengu. It's the most popular ship. Which I find interesting is that it seems like the requirements for flying a Tengu effectively for like ratting and mission running seem to be lower than, for instance, if a Raven Navy issue. I mean, it's not that these guys have a problem with ISK, but they seem to refer to Tengu, which is pretty interesting. And one interesting thing I noticed was the Nix. It seems like 1% of botters actually use Nix. 99% doesn't. This was and then again, 1% also use magnets. Don't know why. So we can look at some things like the missions that are run on any given day. We see here a couple of interesting things. So Crucible, we had a lot of people who had to patch and such things. So we see increased activity around there. We have the random spikes, for that's weekends and things like that. Then we have this thing here, which is January 24th. January 24th, we put out a small incremental patch. The interesting thing about that one was that we made some changes to the Python binaries we ship, where these guys had a bit of trouble figuring out what was going on because we did some changes intended to stop these. As you can see, it didn't really last more than a couple of days until everybody had patched up to the newest injection tools and whatnot. But it was bump in the road, and we can see it had a sort of an impact. The next interesting thing was this one. That was the first wave of bans we did in 2012, which is continuing. You can see the activity going from there. It was kind of going up for a while, then it dips to a lower level. You can see that it actually has an impact in terms of we catch a bunch of guys, and it does correlate to low activity. And then we had this one here. That was actually just the launcher shipping, which these bots don't deal very well with. So we see the same here. ISK bounties that are given out. We do have the patch that broke a bunch of bots for a couple of days. Then we have the first ban wave, which put a big dent in the ISK that goes into the economy. And again, we have the launch. So we have the launcher, which is the dip. And then we see, you'd assume that they come back very shortly after. But actually what we're seeing is that the day after as well, we put out a bunch of bans. And it didn't actually, it didn't recover to the full level of activity we saw before that, which suggests that we did something. And we have the radio, same thing going on. Oh, that was no arrows. So we see the same thing here. We have, dips, when we ban people, and we have, high activity on the weekends, that you assume from, you guys playing. This graph is kind of funny to look at. What this is ore mined. Each individual line represents a type of ore. What we can see is that we had a steady increase from early January this year until the arrow. The arrow is when we started with the new banning system we have. And we can see from then, this is grouped by week, and it's the relative amount across time. And you can see it's a pretty steady decrease in terms of the ore mine, which means, and this is actually one of the feedback things we saw from the forums, is that people are actually able to find ore in Empire, which is nice, for the people who want to mine an Empire. The bots aren't taking it all up, instantly after downtime, which, leaves players to do fun stuff. So we have we graph, activity across people and things like that, and this was one of the interesting things I saw. when I was just looking through what kind of data we have. This is one of the top miners we have in the game. And the interesting thing you might be able to see, which isn't really that clearly presented because it's a continuous line, but actually it's discontinuous right there, which means it actually was a bot, which is a shame because I really thought that people really liked mining and especially to this degree, but yeah, it's not like that. And back to Sreegs.
I don't remember why I picked this picture. Oh. What's next? Scarlet letters. For those of you who are not fervent readers like myself, what a scarlet letter refers to is a novel where, and I'm probably going to get it wrong because I don't even really know. I think I looked it up on the internet or something. But the Scarlet Letter is essentially a novel about a woman who does something naughty and has to wear a scarlet letter so that everyone knows she's naughty. And this was a way to kind of punish them in those days. In this particular case, people ask questions like, why don't we, when we catch someone botting, why don't we just put a mark on their account for everyone to see and kind of, put them in stockades in the town square and whatever. You can all come and throw tomatoes at them, or tomatoes, depending on where you're from. There's a couple reasons for that. And one of them is that I'm not convinced that it would be at all helpful. Going through these slides, it is a discussion that we have internally, and the only benefit that I can see to actually naming and shaming people, whether it be an alliance, I mean, I apologize that the words fell off of that particular graph, but where that filled in, those are real numbers. I don't really see a benefit to anybody other than I'm really mad at someone, and I can now use this as a way to go after them outside of the scope of what it is, right? Now, that's not to say that I'm a really firm believer in it, and so what I'm asking for today is, if this is something that interests you, send us an email, post on the forums, look for, I'll try and maybe make a blog and just give a thread that makes sense. Or maybe I'll just make a forum post, and so it's a place where we can at least manage the thread a little bit. And I want your ideas and your reasons for why this should be this way, because frankly, this is all I've been able to come up with, and I don't really see it having an impact for anything other than that alliance is a bunch of jerks. And look, they had 7 guys who did something bad. Like. I don't see what that does to solve the actual problem, is kind of what I'm getting at. So, but I can be convinced. Also bribed, maybe. So let's chat. Yeah. These are our new botting changes. So there are some things that we did recently. I don't remember what the first one is. Bam. One of the things we noticed when we did the last iterations of the botting stuff was that and it was a theory that players called out immediately. So it's not like we weren't paying attention. What people would do is they would realize that we would put a mark on the account, so they would transfer the character, and then we would, in theory, lose track of the character, and they could be back in business, right? So the theory was, if you were the worst of the worst type of guys, you would essentially be able to be in a constant state of first or second strike, right? It would cost you $20 every time you got one, or whatever the cost of a character transfer is. But you could do that conceivably. That doesn't happen anymore. If you're caught botting, whether it's a first strike, second strike, whatever, you have foregone your transferring characters privileges in perpetuity. So the first time that account gets marked, you can't move the character. You could always break the rules and I guess give someone your login and try and do something that way. But the legal method for transferring characters will no longer be possible. This is new stuff for you guys, I think. Bam. Bannings are done daily. We don't do, I think they're done, if they're not done daily today, they will be in the next week or two. And in essence, what that means is instead of what you should see is instead of there being a magical day where everyone's really upset, it should be every day. And in essence, what we'll have is I want to get away from this idea that there might be a window, whether they know what it is or not, where you're somehow still profitable. Like I want to kind of remove that. This will be a daily thing. If you screw around one day, you're gone the next. And I don't want to. And I also don't like the idea of these big, Moses coming down from the mountain events. It should be a process. It should be something that's repeated. It should be something fairly automated, and it should work. Just going bam and banning 2,000 people, I don't think historically is shown by anybody as having really been all that successful. Starting like last week, we're also taking away all the money. So what we've started running is we've engineered a way to actually detect. Part of what we're doing with our detection is sorting out exactly how much money was gained from it, and then that's going back away. So right now what we're seeing is a whole lot of ISK being manufactured out of midair and kind of injected into the economy. That's bad. I don't know anything about money, no more than Alan Greenspan at any rate. So the best I can do is listen to the economist and believe that that's bad. Printing money, not a good thing unless you're the Fed. So what we'll do is we'll reverse all that, and I think I say that the same thing same thing goes for RMT. If we find a ring and something else is going on, we're going to reverse it. It's the timings and things of that nature may not be spot on immediately. In other words, if somebody's been buying ISK for 20 years or, well, we haven't been around that long, but whatever period of time works, their wallet's probably not going to go in the negative trillion, but there will be a day where we'll say, this is where the amnesty ended, which is already passed, and we're going to start removing income from wherever it came from when it shouldn't have. So that happens in perpetuity. And that applies to both income made from botting and income made from RMT. With botting, I know what you're thinking. How do you handle mining? Because that's mining and it's not ISK. What we're actually doing is we're calculating the ISK value of the ore, and so we'll negative your wallet. We're not going to waste our time trying to find all your little ore stashes. You need money. This is two-factor authentication. Some of you were here last year, and if you were here last year, you might have gotten a bag with a little thing that you push, and it doesn't work on your account. That's changing, and I want to do two things for you. I want to tell you when it's going to start working, ish, and
Can I get that right?
it'll be on the slide. It'll say ish, but it'll be close. Yeah. Can you hold me to it ish, please? And I'll also give you an explanation in a second for why it took so long. There's some issues that we weren't quite ready for. One of those is the fact that as great as Eve is, and as much as we keep it fresh and everything else, some of the infrastructure and some of the ways we handle things didn't quite work the way it would work if we were sitting in a room designing a game today. There were some changes that we needed to make to the way we handle identification, and there were some changes that we needed to make from just the way we authorize, like we handle things like an authentication process anyway. Simply taking it and plugging in some magic box that magically now makes your Eve client work with a piece of plastic with a number on it, provided by Vasco to log into your account. It doesn't. That secret box doesn't exist for software this complex. So we had to make some changes in the way we're handling authentication routines and things of that nature in order to make that even possible. The other thing that we don't have today, which I always found interesting, is that we don't actually validate any of the identifying information you give us when you create an account. If you're not validating any of the information that you provide me when you give me an account, it makes it really difficult for me to give you a magic device that makes it really hard to get into your account. So what we've had to do is go through, and very shortly we're essentially going to be validating email addresses on every single Eve account, whether that'll be compulsory, whether you get a token or not. Token's still optional. Validating the email address is not so much. And in this particular case, that's just to make life easier for you. If you lose your token, how do I communicate with you? Like it's a little difficult. Believe it or not, I'm not creepily following you all around at night. And we're looking at a time frame of July-ish for this to be working. Yeah, and there might be another slide at the keynote or something that'll be a little more serious. If I put a date down, I'm pretty much kind of making it up educatedly, if that's a word. Uh-oh. RMT, it's on the red part. It's a black and white monitor. We've established some early, really interesting things that we're not ready to show you yet, but as far as some things that we're doing to help us identify in the long term patterns of real money trade-related activity. This is kind of a fluff slide, because basically all I'm going to do is tell you it's really cool. There is no 3 strikes rule for RMT. That you're just dead immediately. You and anybody you associate with, and everyone eats dirt means all the money comes away. If you buy ISK from someone, I'm taking your money away, and I don't really have a whole lot of pity for that, because you could just buy Plex. So there's really no reason, like, and when you look at the margins, the things that I'm seeing are people are like, they're really chincing in a lot of cases. And the risk that you take in doing that, it'll become more apparent very, very, very near in the future, but the risk is significant. And one thing that people seem to not recognize is the fact that computers have this ability to actually exist in multiple points in time. And like, if you buy ISK from someone like 3 months ago, like, I can still find that. It didn't magically, it's not your bank, they just lose everything. It exists, and I can figure this out. So people should be cognizant of that, and that because you haven't been tagged and you bought something 2 weeks ago, you didn't magically, there's no such thing as a bank error in your favor. It's not Monopoly. It'll come back to get you. And now I'll have some Q&A, because I'm sure you have some. I tried to save plenty of time, which means all of like 10 minutes. I think we have a microphone. I don't know how it works, because I don't know if I actually got a person talk into it, and if your voice comes out.
Hello? Yeah.
Hey.
Hey. Since I'm Krutoy, this is not alcohol anonymous, is it? I've been banned for RMT. I've been banned for RMT, and I have to go back to what we discussed on CSM in Skype channel. You said that the RMTs will be, bots will be banned, and all the ISK removed, right? Mm-hmm. What about all the assets that they have, poses, all of that other stuff? For example, in drone regions, up till it changes to bounties, they have alloys, in their corporate hangar and stuff. What happens to all of that?
We still have to make a decision as to how far back on the timeline we go with it. I mean, what's bad is already what's bad. What we can do is fix a problem going forward. What I will tell you is that when we look at a situation from a point in time where we are willing to action, that if you've hidden your investments in an alliance or a corporation, I don't see anything different. That'll go away. Whether I'll go back and retroactively destroy alliances, because we didn't catch them a year ago, I sincerely doubt. I mean, I'll be a realist about it. But that damage is done. But going forward, if I do see an organization where you're clearly doing bad, then I have no problem with taking the assets instead of the money. Also, that's more work, and I'm more likely to be angry when I do it. So.
My question is about the red mark of shame.
Yeah.
You said you wanted a good reason to allow it.
Yeah.
How about allowing CEOs to protect their corpse by knowing that the person applying to them has a mark against them?
That is one thing that I considered. That is one thing that I considered in the discussion, and it's not really a question I can answer right now. Purely because, well, I agree with you. It makes sense. And if I was a CEO, that would be a tool that I might think would be useful. But what I'd really like to do with that particular question is have a really good thread about it and get a lot of different perspectives.
You heard him, guys. Start the thread.
No, I'll write a thread. I'll write a thread.
All right, two things. First, I don't know if you mentioned, did you mention anything about like a iPhone app or anything?
No, it's one could. Sorry, I'm really thirsty. I'm also not in very good shape. The one thing that
I disagree.
Yeah. Oh. One thing that we could. One thing that one can assume is that if we're going to be doing what other people in the industry are doing with two-factor authentication, that we would try to, at the very least, keep up with the Joneses. That's not a promise, but I mean, it's common sense. I don't have an app right now.
Okay. What about, you mentioned taking away assets or giving those assets an ISK value, like minerals and stuff. What about, what are you going to be doing? Is it just going to be like a straight negative ISK, or what about the guys that are buying plexes and then jet canning them and then switching them to another account and then selling said plexes?
Assets are assets.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sean.
We know what they're doing, and those are their assets. So assets get seized, or essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the place where I can make you feel the most pain, and that's where we'll remove it from. Because that's the point.
Just don't touch my posting.
Yeah, okay.
I have two questions. One's really simple. Are you going to do anything about JITA local spam? I know no one cares about it, but there's obvious botters doing every 30 seconds their post of whatever. And
everyone asked about it. I think we also have we do have a report spam button. It does work. Yeah. There may be some issues with timing for a little while, but my understanding is that first off, people recognizing that there's been a lot of chat in JITA local, it's been recognized and people are looking at it. What that looks like today, I'm not really sure because I don't really consider chat spam botting. But there is something to handle that problem. That system was recognized to not be catching some stuff that it should have, so that's being tweaked a little bit. And the best thing you can do is report to spam because that's how that logic gets built.
I should add something to that.
He might actually know.
The report ISK spam button, do not use it, only use it for actual ISK spammers, not for scammers. If you see a scammer repeatedly do things, they're either a botter, so report for bot, or file a petition. The ISK spammers, we only look at actual ISK spammers, so aren't here's advertising.
So
we'll ignore every other report.
So what he said on what he said, just so for posterity, in case he wasn't loud enough to get it into a microphone, is that do not use the report spammer button in the game as in the right-click report spam for anything other than reporting ISK spammers. If they're spamming some other wonderful text, file a petition or use a different mechanism.
the other question was associated with breaking authentication and authorization. Currently, the Eve client goes ahead and authenticates you when you first log in, but then you kind of authorize if you're authorized to use these characters. Are they ever going to go ahead and break those two into two different pieces, so that way when you want to switch characters, you need to go ahead and authorize. Basically, you have to authenticate again as yourself. This is.
I couldn't speak to that off the top of my head right now.
It's somewhat related to security. It's related to the login associated with it.
It's a good question, and I'm sure we're recording this, and I really like to watch myself in videos, so I won't forget, and I'll try and find an answer for you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. Are you doing something about market bots? I agree that they add liquidity to the market, but some of them are fucking annoying.
Yeah. What you saw, if you followed the thread when we did the dev blog about this, was that people really actually noticed like right away. They were like, "Wow, what did you do?" Because the market is so much not poopy today. What we did find is that essentially 10 market bots made the market bad for a lot of people. So what yes, we are catching market bots. We may have to work on some things to make that more efficient.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I run a few websites, and one thing we've done,
Can you talk in the mic? Cause
I run a few websites, and one thing we do when people spam and stuff is when they log in, they can still log in and do stuff. Nothing they do is visible, so they think they're spamming our site, and all their code and everything is working just fine, and they can go for weeks and weeks and weeks thinking that they're posting millions of comments, but none of that actually happened.
Yep.
Why in Eve do you ban the account? Why can't you just sort of send them off to Sissy or some copy?
That's kind of, if the way without getting too much into detail, that's kind of how in a way how the chat spam stuff works.
Okay, so the chat spam stuff works, but how about like the bots, like the
bots? I'd rather just yeah.
Because they think they're working, right? You know, they come back a month later and look, I've got trillions of ISK, but I can't do anything with it.
Yeah, rerouting them in that particular way is not something that I really see as feasible. Spoofing function calls and things of that nature to make the client think it's still talking to a server.
Yeah, you could like have a copy of Tranquility that is somewhere they go.
Tranquility Solo Edition.
Well,
it's interesting, and I'll give it some thought. Yeah.
I have a question not about botting or RMT, but some other injections into client. It's widely known that some wormholes corporation in Alliances uses some additions to Eve clients. I don't ready to give you links or something that help them build a current. They have a current online wormhole map with roads from one wormhole to another. So, do you do something about it? So
yeah, injection we consider just as much a problem as anything else. It's just a method of doing something we don't want you to be doing. And there are no 3 strikes when it comes to injection. That's altering the client is permanent and immediately. What we'd be doing in any specific instance, I couldn't speak to. If you have information and you feel we're missing something, anyone in this room can send a, not really anonymous, but I'm the only one who reads the email to security@CCP Games. Try to keep it clean. And I'll look into whatever it is you feel is going on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In security systems where you have a small number of violators, percentage-wise, false positives are a pretty significant issue. Do y'all pay attention? Do y'all have a way of figuring out your false positive rates?
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, do you know what they are? Or can you reveal
One person in the past year. Yep.
Really? Okay.
Yep. As far as we know, I mean, I'll give a caveat to that. I'll give a caveat to that, which is, if you get caught doing something, everybody in prison is innocent. You do have to take some of it with a grain of salt, but we have run into one, actually it might be 2 now, situations where where the Skynet went self-aware and snagged, I think, like 2 people who didn't. And I'll be honest with you, we really do take that seriously, and we do dig into it. And in cases where you've lost time or effort or whatever else, we take care of that as well. So you don't have to worry about like my crazy script killing you from the server and me eating $15 worth of your cash. If we made a mistake, we'll fix it.
I've got a pretty booming voice. I don't think I need this. This is directed towards your stat guy.
The only reason you need it is for the recording.
Oh, all right.
Sorry.
Apparently my voice isn't booming enough.
It doesn't even really do anything. I just like to make people use the microphone.
Does this microphone remind you of something? This is actually for your statistics guy here. He came up with some very sexy pie charts. Some of them were lacking maybe a little bit of detail around alliance names. But actually, something a little bit maybe better than names, you know, so this way people can't get too ragey. Would you be able to show by country where you have said banned these individuals from? So when it comes to the pie charting, take a look at the bans. No. I can just picture the rage going on the forums right now. Like, where's the details, right?
I mean, yes, we would be able to show that. I'm just not. You can bring that up in the name and shame thread because that I'll make because I find it interesting. But I'm not sure. I think that does fall along the same lines of. And again, I'm on the fence with some of it anyway. I think it does fall kind of into that gray area of really all I'm giving you is a metagaming thing like, yeah, Americans suck, you bought too much, fatsos, you know, whatever. So, like, we can't, what you're doing is you're giving people the capacity to ostracize an entire nation. And I think we might want to avoid
I'm from Canada, so that happens naturally. But,
also, I would like to point out that as Sreegs discussed, we don't actually verify your information. So you'll find that most of these people are actually from like Pakistan and places like that. If we look at the data we have, which gives you nothing, you can't really trust that data.
Could we get it broken up by type of botting, like mission runners, anomalies, ratters, market bot?
That we have. I'm surprised it wasn't on here.
Yeah, if we could get something broken down.
Yeah, we'll make a dev blog and based on these questions, include some new stuff. I'm actually out of time, so that was our last question. But if you have any more questions, I'll be in the PvP room for the rest of the day, and I'll be out and about. So thank you.